Right, so once again, good morning. Good morning, BS Criminal first year. And it's nice to see you again. And finally, we are now on the lesson 3 of our discussion. And this is the last lesson under in chapter 1. But before we start, I would like to congratulate everybody for doing your assignment. And I have already seen those submissions. And I'm quite amazed with what you have presented. No, I really love how you present this historical data in your house, in your local community, and that's it. Because as what I've said before, when we do historical, when we gather data as to historical data, so we really need to start or begin in our own locality. So we really have to discover kung ano meron sa ating locality that you think this will give historical value, no, in our place in our lives, and that's it. No, before we study others, the national issues. So sometimes we need to study our own. That's it. Because as what I heard someone who says that it's really hard to appreciate others if you yourself you don't appreciate what you have. So it will always begin with appreciating ours. And last meeting we discussed about historical data, and I also asked you the difference about autobiography and biography. And congratulations, because most of you, or maybe 98% of the students, I hope hindi kayo na Google, but it's still okay to ask Google, but for as long as you express your own thoughts. Now, when you say autobiography, it is, although autobiography and biography, they are all accepted. They are all part of this historical data that could actually help, no, help historians to really discover what is the Philippine history. And most likely, most of these biographies and autobiographies, these are the biographies and autobiographies of our national heroes and other authors or historians which who really remarked or who really contributed in Philippine history. So when we say autobiography, no, it is you as a writer and you as an historian, you are the one who writes your own biography. You are the one who expresses everything. Tulad ng ginawa ni Pigafetta or other historians. They write their own journey. That's autobiography. And when we say biography, I ask somebody to write something or background about me. I would like, for example, Rizal would ask Pigafetta to write something about him. That's biography. But if Rizal himself wrote something about himself, about his journey during this El Filibusterismo and Noli Me Tangere, those will refer to what we call biography. Now, before we start, I want everybody to write their name on the comment section with your, respective class section, okay? Because from time to time, I am checking your names here. No, aside from the attendance, but anyway, basically yung attendance nyo is i-check ng inyong secretary, kaway-kaway dyan, para maging maiwasan natin yung pagiging bias, or in other words, we could still accept those. Kasi minsan may mga ma-miss yung mga secretary nyo, at least, no, me and your secretary will take time to really look into your attendance. At least it's 10%. And if ever you have something some important things to attend to, so it's okay, no, just inform me or your secretary, and your secretary will be the one to tell me. Or you can also send me your PM, no, direct na lang kayo mag-send sa akin for you to be considered in our class. Okay? So I hope everybody is well this morning. Again, I also thank everybody for all your supports in our blogging competition here in SKSU, no. So it's not just about my name, but we are actually bringing the name of our college, which is the College of Criminal Justice Education. Okay? Let's continue. So allow me to share my screen this time. So since this is the last part of this chapter, of course, this subject will be quite interesting. And right after this chapter pala, I will be announcing some activities that you're gonna do. So as what I have said during our first day of class, the first chapter, I will be the one to discuss the first chapter, and the remaining chapter, we will disseminate this to everybody in the group. It can be through debate, through newscasting, or through reporting. We will do some twists, no? We will do some activities which will actually uphold your skills, which will actually engage your skills and yourselves, your collaboration, and how you work in your team. So that's it. So we will discover those activities. Now, before we'll discuss what is historical criticism, I want everybody to answer what is criticism. What do you do when you criticize? So I want you to create your own words and write your answer on the comment section. For you, what is criticism? In your own ideas. Please do not copy directly from the internet because malalaman ko din naman yan. So ano ba yung ginagawa? What is criticism? And what do you do when you criticize? Ano ba yung ginagawa usually ng isang tao when you criticize? You could actually inculcate or integrate this in real life situation wherein you are in a specific situation that you really need to criticize. Now, whether you like it or not, you really have to. So how is it? What is criticism or what criticism is all about? And what do you do when you criticize? Okay? Write your answer on the comment section for 5 points. I will give you 1 minute to do this activity. All right, thank you so much. So now let's move on with our activity. Now, lesson 3, which is the last part actually of this chapter, we will be discussing here about historical criticism. Now, what is the role of criticism in discovering what Philippine history is? Or through criticism, through the nature, the concept of criticism, how did historian discover everything, discover what is truth? Because you know what, through criticism, everything will be unveiled. Everything will be discovered from the very beginning, the implication, the connection of the past and the future, using some artifacts. Okay? Okay. Now, when we do historical criticism or when we talk about historical criticism, this examines the origin of earliest texts to appreciate the underlying circumstances upon which the text came to be. That's according to Solon and Solon 2001. So when we talk about criticism, we will be integrating some examines. We will examine something, the origin. Ano ba ang pinagmula ng text na ito? Is this really true? Tama ba? Or is it really reliable? The content of El Filibusterismo, Noli Me Tangere, the anecdotes about the KKK, about the Gomborza. So dyan papasok sa criticism. Through criticism, we could be able to know what is really true and what is not. Okay? Because some issues arise that there are some discrepancies. May mga mali daw when it comes to the documents. Sabi ko nga, di ba, in the previous discussion, no document, no history. Now, the problem is, for example, we already accepted or acknowledged some sources. Then we are now practicing it, and we are now believing as Filipinos that ito talaga yung nangyari. But later on pala, we will find out that these are all bluffs. These are all fake news. So that will be the problem. That's the reason why in this modern study of Philippine history, criticism is there. The vital role of criticism or the concept of criticism is really needed in studying Philippine history. Now, it has two important goals. First, to discover the original meaning of the text. So the first thing that we're going to do when we do criticism in historical data is that we need to discover the original meaning of the text. Because as the years go by or as the years pass by, nagbabago yung laman ng mga teksto. Nagbabago yung laman ng mga aklat. And maybe there are some biases, there are some discrepancies, or there are some favorable part of that certain text. Pwedeng may binago, di ba? Tulad ng, if you're trying to compare yung mga packet books with the movies, excuse me, I will give you an example. May mga movie kasi minsan na malayo doon sa original na text, doon sa original na story. Lalo na kapag sasali si Chismosa, di ba? Maraming changes, di ba? Kung doon sa totoong nangyari is buhay pa siya, kay Chismosa, patay na. That's the problem if we do not uphold criticism in learning Philippine history. So we really need to discover the original meaning of the text. Kasi kapag mali, like we are following this modified text, this modified resources, it will mislead us. It will mislead us in discovering or unfolding the secrets behind our history. So that's why we really need to do this historical criticism. In its primitive, anong primitive? Ito yung maybe before the colonization of the Spaniards. What's really true about Filipino culture? What's really true about Filipino religion? May religion ba talagang Filipino during primitive time? Or wala? Basically, wala. We already have the anito. But when Spaniards invaded us, this was the time when we started embracing Christianity. Or historical context in its literal sense or sensus literalis historicus. The literal sense of it. So everything, no? Yung literal, kumbaga, wala siyang malalim na pagkahulugan. Kung ano talaga yung sinabi ni Rizal during that time, literally, yun talaga yung dapat nating i-find out using criticism. If this is really true, ito talaga yung original na sinabi ni Rizal. Baka may binago na yung mga writers. That's it. So, doing criticism will help us discover, sabi ko nga, what's really true? Ano ba talaga ang totoo? Okay? I hope you get my point. Now, second, the statement is that, second goal of doing criticism is that to establish a reconstruction of the historical situation of the author and the recipients of the text. Establish a reconstruction of the historical situation of the author. So in this case, we are trying to know the life of the author. It's more on biographical approach. So parang ang subject na ito, it is something like literary criticism, wherein we will try to criticize even the lives, the background, or the demographics of the writer. Kasi yung buhay ng isang writer, maaaring may kinalaman sa kanyang gawa. Like for instance, the life of Antonio Pigafetta. As what I've said before, Antonio Pigafetta is one of the famous historians who actually accounted their journey with Magellan during the exhibition of Magellan. But we really need, as a criticizer, as we do this criticism, we need to know who is Pigafetta. Like, kailangan mo alamin anong buhay ni Pigafetta. Bakit ganito yung mga gawa ni Pigafetta? Bakit masyadong favor kay Magellan? Okay. Kasi pala si Pigafetta, na-find out ko through criticism, I was able to find out that Pigafetta is, the subordinate, sunod-sunuran, or boss ni Pigafetta, si Magellan. So what will you expect? So what we're gonna expect is that maybe yung mga gawa ni Pigafetta is merong bias, which really favors to Magellan. Diba? Kasi as I read the books in Readings in Philippine History, which produced by Rex, makita natin doon na the way that Pigafetta described the life, the time of Philippines. Meron ka doon parte na yung mga Pilipino doon magnanakaw. Wherein, kumbaga, he changed the word innocence into something like thieves. Parang kinukuha doon ng mga Pilipino yung mga gamit nila. Where in fact pala, I found out in some books, through my criticism, I do criticism, that these things are a sort of barter. Barter pala yun, exchange. But the term that used by Pigafetta is quite negative. Diba? Kasi nga, he has this personal or subjective aspect. Diba? Kasi ito siya as a writer, then most likely, he is in favor of Magellan. That's it, no? We need to discover the construction of the author and what is the connection of the author and the text he produced. And of course, the originality or the authenticity of the text. Now, what to expect in this class is that first, you have to explain the meaning of historical criticism, and we're done with that. Discuss the importance of historical criticism. What is the importance of historical criticism in discovering Philippine history? And this is the one of the important things here, at maybe ito yung napapagawa ko sa inyo, which is to analyze the authenticity of the text. So, paano natin ito i-analyze? Paano natin malaman that this text is true? That this text is really written by Rizal himself? Or is it written by some authors? Diba? Now, we'll begin with lesson outline. Let's begin with the nature or the origin of the word historical criticism. Historical criticism has its roots in the 17th century during the Protestant Reformation and gained popular recognition in the 19th and 20th century. That's according to Eveling, 1963. Now, the absence of historical investigation paved the way historical criticism to rest on the philosophical and theological interpretation. The passing of time has advanced historical criticism into various methodologies today, such as source criticism, form criticism, redaction criticism, tradition criticism, and canonical criticism. Now, these are the new phases of criticism. Basically, kasi pag sinabi criticism, it's purely criticizing something, it's purely investigating something, it's purely evaluating something. But nowadays, we already have these different methodologies. The source criticism. We will find out later what are the intent or what are the purposes of this criticism. Okay. Now, the absence of historical investigation paved the way historical criticism to rest in philosophical and theological interpretation. In here, we could actually say that aside from those methodologies, malaki yung ginampanan ng criticism, in the investigation of Philippine history. Of course, when we do criticism, sometimes we use some philosophy, the philosophical and theological interpretation. These are some philosophies wherein it will guide us, it will lead us. Now, what are the two types of historical criticism? Now, we'll begin with the first one, the external criticism. This criticism determines the authenticity of the source. From the word itself, authenticity of the source. Saan nagmula ang record na ito? Saan nagmula ang book na ito? Sino ang nag-publish? Legit ba siya na writer? Or baka chismosa lang ito siya? So you really have, baka if we're going to relate it in a real situation, pag nakain ka ng chismis, balita na ba na nakaka-zombie daw yung vaccination? How true? Who is the author? Who produced this one? Kasi if we're not going to know who produced this kind of information, this will mislead us. And this will bring us into conflicts. Yan na magsa-start yung gulo because of some misconception, misinterpretation, miscommunication, misleading. Because of some hoax, because of some unfactual claims. Kaya, di ba, huwag maniwala sa mga sabi-sabi. Di ba ang sabihan? Ang naniniwala sa sabi-sabi, walang bait sa sarili. And that's true. Unless otherwise, you have seen some proof, evidence na ito totoo talaga. Na may nag-zombie na talaga nakita mo talaga actual or na-report ng WHO. Pag wala naman, so that's hoax. That's fake news. Now, let's continue. The authenticity of the material, so authenticity, gaano ba siya ka-original? Yung totoo talagang, for example, ito. Let's say ito ay halimbawa ng isang artifacts, no? Mga sinaunang gagamitan ng mga tao. So, alamin mo ngayon kung ito ba yung totoo, saan ito nang galing? Baka gawa lang may brand. Kasi, but through the help of archaeology and anthropology, doon mo malalaman, kasi tayo, we're just mere humans. We're just mere readers at mga feeling historian na tayo, of course. We are not really entitled to really test, no, what is it. But at least, no, somehow, mayroon din tayong konting idea how to do it. And how can we apply this in our real life situation. Now, the authenticity of the material may be tested in two ways. First, by paleographical. What is paleographical? The deciphering and dating of physical manuscript. So in here, you're gonna find out yung mga year na na-publish yung isang manuscript. Gaano ba totoo na ito published in 1950? No? So you really have to focus on the manuscript, the books, na nakita mo, sino yung author, kailan na-publish. That's about paleographical. And diplomatic criticism. What is diplomatic criticism? This is critical analysis of historical document to understand how the document came to be. The information transmitted, the relationship between the facts purported in the document and the reality. So it's more on analysis. When we do diplomatic criticism, ito na yung kailangan mong i-criticize talaga. The whole paper as to its historical documents to understand how, paano ba ito nangyari, paano ito nagawa. The process, sino ang publisher? The information transmitted, gaano ba katotoo itong laman ng book na ito? Is it really true? The relationship between the facts purported and the reality. Baka itong naisulat dito, hindi naman nangyayari sa itong buhay. Masyadong fictional. Imagination na lang, puro na lang. Baka sinabi sa book na si Rizal may superpower. Diba? So, that's something like it has no connection with the reality. So, ito po nabasa nyo, you have to assess kung may katotohanan ba ito, malapit ba ito sa katotohanan or suntok sa buwan. Suntok sa buwan means hypothetical and these things are really impossible to happen. Di ba? So you could only do that when you read a lot, when you ask interview, when you inquire, do some investigation. So it's still form of criticism. Kahit kasi mag-criticize tayo pero wala tayong alam, it's useless. We need to sabi nga kanina, di ba? It should have some, what? It should have some philosophical and theological basis. Pwede natin mag-pattern sa ibang mga theories, no? That will serve as our guide. Now, the material must be investigated based on the time and place it is written. So, kailangan mong i-investigate kung kailan at saan ito naisulat. The critic must determine, so since kayo ay, you are the one who are doing this criticism, you are known to be critic. So, di ba sa thesis, mayroong critic reader? That's how you critic. So, when you are entitled to criticize, to look into the information written, to evaluate or to assess what's really written on this certain documents or books. Now, the critic must determine whether the material under investigation is raw. Raw, ibig sabihin, original talaga ito, walang edit. Raw material, so hilaw talaga siya originally from the writer himself. Meaning unaltered. Meaning unaltered means walang nabago. And it exists exactly as the author left it. At kung anong mukha ng buhok na yun, kung anong kaluma, I mean, kung anong meron doon, nung iniwan ni Rizal, dapat ganun pa rin. So, this is the things, or these are the things that you need to do. Investigate the rawness, gaano ba ito ka-original? Kumbaga, walang binago, virgin talaga, kumbaga ba? Meaning unaltered, walang binago ng mga meaning, and ito talaga yung nangyari sa totoong buhay ng isang writer or documenter. That's for external, no? Now we'll continue with external criticism. I know, with internal. From the word itself, internal, external, panlabas na. Panlabas na kanya. And of course, when you read a book, di ba, maunang makita mo is yung name, author, publication, year it was published. That's external, no? And it has two ways. Yun ang nga nabalita natin. Now for the internal, it's quite critical. Or should I say, it's more critical. Kasi dito is kailangan mo tingnan yung nilalaman. The content of a certain documents, manuscript, or books. Okay, just wait for a while. Mag-inom ako ng tubig. Naubusan ako ng energy. Alright. Now, internal criticism determines the historicity. Gaano ba ito katotoo? Gaano ba ito ka-align sa history ng Pilipinas? Historicity of the facts, no, contained in the document, yung nilalaman, the content. It is not necessary to prove the authenticity of the material or document. No, it's not really necessary now to really prove that this text is original. The originality. But what matters is that how true it is. Diba? How true. However, the facts contained in the document must first be tested before any conclusion pertaining to it can be admitted. Of course, kailangan mo munang i-test. How do you test it? You really have to find out through interview, through some FGD, pwede ka mag-consult sa mga authors or different experts about the content ng libro na ito. Before mo siya i-publish or before mo spread or do some conclusion. Diba? Like for instance, when we do internal criticism, how are we going to apply it in real life situation? For example, may nabasa ka ng text, si jowa mo may kabit. So mag-conclude ka ba agad? Mag-judge ka ba? So first thing is, you're gonna do some criticism. You're gonna find out, investigate, do some inquiry to really know kung ano talagang totoong nangyari. Later on, if you found that this is true, so it's now the time to pertain some conclusion or to say something or do some moves or to publish something. Now, in determining the value of the facts, the character of the sources, the knowledge of the author, and the influences of the prevalent at the time of writing must be carefully investigated. So, gaano ba credible si writer? Totoo ba yung, at sino ba yung mga source na ginamit niya in the content of this book, no? And the knowledge of the author. Kaya alam mo kung gaano ba katalino, gaano ba ka-entitled or credible ang author na ito to write this. Diba? Something like that. Now, it must be ascertained first that the critic knows exactly what the author said and that he or she understands the document from the standpoint of the author. And most of all, as a critic, tayo din dapat, we also have this knowledge. No? So, of course, I believe that through reading, through investigation, through some interview, as a critic, you will be able to know what are the steps to do. So, kailangan mo alamin. Kasi kapag little knowledge lang yung gamit mo, so mahirapan ka, no, to really know what's really true and to criticize. Because you cannot give what you don't have. Kasi kapag hindi mo alam, how will you know na ito ay totoo or hindi? Baka pinataka ka na lang. So, you really have to be, abreast, no? In terms of knowledge. Specifically, what we call this, historical knowledge. Okay, just wait for a while. Relax mo na konti. So it's 28 minutes. Hindi lang ha, I have to read some message. Okay, let's continue. So that's it. No, as a critic, so kailangan natin, we are having this kind of knowledge for us to be entitled or for us to really, to critically determine kung ano talaga itong nangyari, di ba? So that's it. Something like you really have to learn something. And you have to know how to what? How to live, how to wear the situation of the author, or to be in the standpoint of the author. So kaya natin maintindihan kung ano talagang point, ano ibig sabihin ng writer nito. Ano itong ibig sabihin niya? Because through that understanding, this will lead us into comprehensive understanding of Philippine history. Moreover, the facts given by the author or writer must be firmly established as having taken place exactly as reported. So dapat talaga it is firmly established means it underwent in some systematic process, di ba? Kasi when we do investigate, when we do research, parang research din kasi ito, it should have some firm establishment of what is the data, ano yung mga content, no? Now, how to test, let's find out kung ilan na lang yung part. I'll just want to, okay, malapit na. Now, how to test authenticity? Paano ba ite-test yung pagiging original, pagiging totoo ng isang story, historical data? Take note how we are here. This criticism is intended for historical data. Huwag yung i-criticize or i-criticize yung katabi nyo dyan or yung classmate nyo. But we are here to understand how are we going to evaluate, no, or to examine what are the available historical data that maybe we can encounter sooner or later or we already encountered, no, in relation to studying history. Now, to distinguish the hoax, ito na yung hoax, ito mga fake news, ito mga maling konsepto, no? Baga mali-mali. These are considered as hoax. Excuse me. So for a while, what's this? My niece is calling. Let me just tanggihan. Tagalog. Alright, so how to test? Okay na ba kayo dyan? How are you? Are you still doing good? Sana tayo. So yan, here's my screen. Okay? Hi sa mga latecomers. Even you're late, no, just write your name on the attendance. Kasi malaman ko rin kung anong time. This is the advantage of using Google, StreamYard. Kasi malaman kung anong oras kayo pumasok sa klase. So malaman natin yung mga baka yung iba nag-attendance lang, hindi pala nakinig. Kasi using this StreamYard, malalaman kung sino talaga yung nanood from the entire class up to the end. Kasi kapag hindi yung pinanood, ito means you are absent in the class, no? Unless you have some valid reason. Now, to distinguish the hoax or misinterpretation from a genuine yung matotoo from hindi totoo human, the historian must use tests common in police and legal detection. So ito parang, it is somehow related in your case as a future police officer, no? Diba? When you do some crime test or yes, when you evaluate something, like ano ba yung totoong nangyari. So ganito rin yung ginagawa natin in testing the authenticity of the text. Parang naghahanap din kayo ng evidence, legit or genuine evidence. Now, making the best guess of the date of the document, she or she examines the material to see whether they are not anachronistic. Anachronistic, ibig sabihin, hindi talaga sila totoo and they don't really take place or they don't really take place in the past. No, like something like they are just made by hoax. They are just some sort of misinterpretation. Now, for some period of history, experts using techniques known as paleography. These are the terms used for the techniques, no, for some expert, historians, experts. And diplomatics. Ito na yung dalawa, paleography and diplomatics. Now, have long known that in certain times, handwriting and the style and form of official documents were conventionalized. So it's here, no? Sometimes when we do the authenticity, when we test the authenticity, kailangan natin pag-aralan yung handwriting. Kasi minsan, di ba, merong handwriting na na-publish about the handwriting of Rizal. But how true are we? Or we are that this is really the handwriting of Rizal. Di ba? Or is it really true na ito ba yung mga sinaunang dokumento na ginamit ni Emilio Aguinaldo, ng KKK, ng Gomborza? How true? So that's what we're gonna do in doing test for the authenticity of some materials. Now, the discipline of paleography and diplomatics were founded in the 17th century by Domjin Mabilla. So ito yung concept na ipa-follow natin when we test the authenticity of certain material. No? We have this paleography and diplomatics. So it was discovered by Domjin Mabillon, a French Benedictine monk and scholar of the Congregation of Saint Maur. Seals have been the subject of special duty of sealographers and experts can detect fake ones. So seal, di ba? We all know that when we are in public government, even in school, we have the seals. Minsan kasi, ang seal ngayon, pwede na i-copy-paste through internet. But if we're going to look into the authenticity of this document with its seal, so kailangan natin malaman kung ano yung seal na ginamit. Mga seal yun na ginamit during the time of Marcos, during the time of KKK, ano ba yung mga seal na ginamit nila during Spanish era. So, gano'n siya condition. And that's the work of sigilographers. And expert can detect fake ones. So, kasi nga, di ba, especially today, hoax is everywhere na talaga. Minsan, we are not sure that these things are true because everything is in the internet. Okay? Now, seals have been, okay, tapos tayo dyan. While anachronistic styles, idioms, orthography, or the punctuation, kumbaga, the study of anachronistic is mag-criticize ka ng isang bagay based on the use of idioms, orthography. Paano yung pagkasulat, no? Or punctuation. Ano ba yung punctuation na ginamit? Is it really true? How will it help you in discovering what's really true? Parang it's more on critical analysis, like you are going to criticize some literary piece. No? Using punctuation, idioms na ginamit, na paano ito mag-determine na ito ay totoo, na ito ay mga idioma ni Rizal. Okay? That can be detected by specialists who is familiar with the contemporary writing. So, one of the reasons why other disciplines are part of studying history because of these things. Now, in this case, it is anachronistic or anachronistic styles using idioms, or testing facts or truth using idiom, orthography, or punctuation, dito pasok si linguist. Kasi based on my readings, no, in studying readings in Philippine history, actually, hindi lang si anthropology, hindi lang si paleology, hindi lang si biologist, yung merong contribution. But even linguists. Linguists, these are the people who study language. Gaano ka-original yung language, no, na ginamit, dialect, the symbols used in these certain books. So sila yung mga, ako talaga, even I'm an English teacher, I could not really say that I'm a linguist. Kasi mix kasi yung aming subject, we have literature. Kapag linguist kasi, they are really focused on the language, the nature of the language. They analyze the originality, the authenticity of the language used by Rizal, by this author, by the Spaniards. So isa yan sa ginagawa, using these anachronistic styles. Now, often spelling particularly of proper names and signatures reveal forgedly as would as also unhistorical grammar. So even the names and signatures, no, gaano ba katotoo na ito yung nilagdaan ni Rizal, nilagdaan ng mga Katipunero during the revolution? Is this really true? So only the linguists can analyze this using some anachronistic styles. And that will actually bring into unhistorical grammar. Kapag unhistorical grammar, ibig sabihin hindi ito totoo or itong mga writings na ito is hindi nangyari in the past. Means ibig sabihin binago, they are modified and they are no longer part of this historical data. As what I've said, kailangan natin malaman kung anong totoo because this will lead us in understanding what's really about Philippine history. Kasi kapag mali yung data, we keep on believing in certain documents where in fact hindi pala totoo. So that's a big loss in our part. Especially we are in the millennial era, we are in modern era, wherein we are just relying on the availability of reading materials about Philippine history. So magiging yun ang problema, like baka we keep on believing about something which is hoax, which is untrue. So as a student, you could actually apply this in your lives. Kapag may narinig kayong balita, huwag agad ikalat. So you really have to do the internal and external criticism. No? Kapag pinarmahan kayo ng sulat, ito, pinarmahan ni ganito, you have to do this anachronistic styles. Alamin mo kung ito ba perma ng nagpadala or baka hindi. Maybe you're just trying to break something, our relationship, something like that. You know what? Philippine history can be associated with our life today. Since we are facing fake news is rampant, it's everywhere. So we have to do our critical thinking using the concept of historical criticism to really understand our life, our walks, and to really find the truth. Ito mahalaga, paghanap ng totoo. Because if we keep on believing, we keep on spreading fake news, that will bring us into conflict and that will devastate our country. So you are the hope of our father nation and you can do something about it. Okay? So anyway, I will announce the assignment na lang. For now, wala na tayong assignment. Relax na lang muna. Okay? Since you have already submitted 2 of your activities. But then, just perform the activities as sinabi ko earlier about what for you, what is criticism. Okay? If you have some question, pwede yung isulat. Okay, any questions? Pwede kayo magtanong actually. So write your questions on the comment section and sasagutin natin yan during our next meeting, in our next meeting. Okay? Please don't be hesitant to write your questions or clarifications or any addition. Pwede kayo mag-add. So kung may gusto kayong i-add or realization, what have you realized about this discussion as human being, as student, as to historical criticism, pwede kayong mag-add. And that will be highly appreciated by me. Okay? So once again, good morning. Thank you so much, everybody, and see you next week. I will just inform you about our next activity and maybe some group reportings or some group activities. Okay? God bless everyone. Keep safe. Don't forget to write your name that will serve as your attendance. Bye-bye!